This is an armoring guide for New World. I'm going to show you everything you need to know about armoring, how to level it fastest, and how you can level it if you don't want to use the trading post. And we're going to talk about all sorts of things like that. But mainly I'm focused on how to level it the most efficiently and fastest. But really fast, in case you are a total noob, you can check on the settlements. You can see for each settlement what tier the forge and the outfitters are at by clicking a settlement and then scrolling down to here. Make sure that the workshop you're using is the appropriate tier for whatever it is you're trying to craft. Once you get to like 200 armoring, you'll need tier 5 to make like the orichalcum stuff and things like that. So be aware. All right, so armoring is actually pretty simple to level. It's going to come down to the two stations. There's the outfitter and there's the forge. And which one you use is completely dependent upon the prices, assuming you're buying things. We'll talk about what if you buy things first, and then I'll talk about gathering things. So if you're going to buy things, it's going to come down to a simple formula, basically. It's which is cheaper, the iron, the leather, or the cloth. And the reason for that is they all use the exact same quantities. It's just if you go here, the outfitter, you make leather versus cloth versus heavy armor. It just changes which one's which, basically. The only thing that you can't skimp on is leather. Every single recipe, whether it's the heavy, the medium, or the light, it always uses at some like fair amount of leather. The ones that you can skimp on are cloths and metals. And what I mean by skimp is for the metals, you can do these recipes where they only use one linen for all this stuff. So you can keep like the quantity of linen down or whatever, and whatever cloth down. Instead using the other ones, using more of the other ones. Now, before we get to price, it's important to know how this works. The only thing that matters is this top one. The other ones, you can fill in with the basic stuff. So the lowest level stuff when leveling, which is what you're going to want to do. I mean, you could put runic leather in here, but you don't want to. You're going to put in, for example, for this one, coarse leather and linen, but then the top one is going to be whatever tier for the thing you're doing. Same way if you go over to the outfitter doing light or medium armor, it's going to be the same thing for the cloth or the leather. The top one, it'll say actually needs to be tier 2, or once you level up to level 50, it needs to be tier 3, which is going to be steel, or it's going to be sateen if it's a cloth, or it's going to be, I think it was rugged for tier 3 for leather, so that's the only one that matters. The other ones, you can just use the basic one. So that's how you're going to determine which thing is cheapest. So when you go to buy things, so you'll look at, for example, say you get to tier 3, and the choices now at tier 3 are steel ingots, which you're going to have to check these prices yourself, guys. I can't give you a guaranteed answer because these prices change day to day. They change server to server. Like, you have to look at this yourself. I cannot hold your hand on this, okay? But anyway, you'll look up, like, steel ingot, and then you'll look up, say, rugged leather, which is also the tier 3, which is going to be about the same price. And then sateen, or satin, I mean, not sateen, sorry, satin. I always forget it's actually satin, isn't it? Satin. And so now in this scenario, I go, okay, satin is actually half as expensive as the steel ingots and the rugged leather. So ideally, we're going to want to use the satin instead of the other stuff. So then what that'll happen, what that'll do is say we're level 50. We're going to buy all the materials we need, but we're going to have to go over to the outfitting station then. And we're going to have to use whichever recipe uses the most satin. So we'll go down to here to the satin ones that require 50 armoring, and these are now our choices because satin was going to be the cheapest. Now the metal, you definitely don't want to use osmodium. You'll use the lowest level metal, the lowest level leather, since the only thing that matters is this top tier one, the tier 3 cloth, if you're going to make the satin at least. So you buy that cheap satin, then just buy coarse leather and iron ingots, and then you're going to craft those in theory. But it doesn't stop there because I actually have a secret for you guys in just a second. But before I get to the secret for leveling even more efficiently than this, really quick, I want to talk about the differences in these. So if you've ever wondered, like, okay, so a shirt gives, say, 3150 armoring, shoes give 810, gloves give 810, hat gives 1620, and this the pants gives 1620. Well, the way that you determine this is basically which do you want to spend less of, the metal or one of the other materials, because the ratios all turn out to where it's roughly the same. The shirt is a little bit less efficient, so you'll avoid the shirt unless you're actually trying to save metal. But say iron ingots are really expensive, and the leather is not, and the satin is just not, especially the leather. So you'd rather use a ton of leather and almost no iron. Say iron's like 3 a piece, and the coarse leather's like 1, and you're just like, I don't want to use iron at all. Then you would use the shirt because it uses way more of the other materials to only 1 iron. The ratio gets skewed to where it's like almost 0 iron per XP. But if iron is pretty cheap and you're trying to actually burn iron and you don't really care, then you're going to either do the shoes or the gloves. Ideally the gloves, because it uses less satin, which unless leather is actually unless satin's actually cheaper than the leather, which may or may not happen. That's why you always gotta check prices. But these ratios, that's all you need to know, these ratios. So basically you just make gloves unless the satin's even cheaper than the leather. But if you're trying to save iron and iron's insanely expensive, then you just go ahead and make the shirts, even though it's like only 1.94 times as efficient or something for not double the whatever. Like, it's not a perfect doubling and slightly less efficient on mats, but it's worth it if the iron's really expensive. And you'll do the same thing, get to tier 4. You know, you use silk, or you'll use whatever the tier 4 leather is. I can actually check it right here because I remember offhand. The layered leather. And then once you hit tier 5, you'll be doing the same thing with infused leather at 150, or infused silk, or calcum ingots, whatever. You know, you gotta do the same exact thing where you one more time. But there's something you can do that's even better than this, but really fast. I'm actually almost curious what tier 5 ones would be. So orichalcum would be 50, infused silk, because it changes tier by tier, so don't just think it's going to be, you know, silk the entire way. So silk is cheaper, and then there is, I actually can't remember, so I have to just do it like this, infused leather. Okay, so infused leather is the cheapest. So right this second, this exact moment in time, on this exact server, if I was going 150 to 200, I would want to be doing medium armor that uses primarily leather because it's the cheapest of the tier 5 materials. And then the other ones I would fill in with iron ingots and linen, for example. Okay, so hopefully that pounded that into your head, but we're not done yet. There's actually a thing you can do that's even more efficient than this. So it gets even better, especially now because it's easy. You could always do this, but now you can actually search this stupid item. So it's actually way better ever since, I don't know when they fixed the bug. The bug was around for at least 9 months, so I'm glad they fixed it. So if you scroll down far enough, and there's a version, a light and a medium version and a heavy version of this stuff, you get down here to the dungeon gear. So there's the armouring gear, obelisk gear, deep mist gear, guardian, shipyard, whatever. So whatever tier you're at, say you're at level 60, you can then check the trading post for this special item. There's coagulated blood, sparkling bone dust, and then as you get later on, there's corrupted talisman. There's jade collars, spectral dust, you know, all that type of stuff. And so what you'll want to do then is you'll want to make any of these over the basic ones. The reason for this is, generally speaking, the item like this is super cheap compared like the amount of XP it gives versus how much you pay for this. And like when you get through all the math, it's almost always better, but you may have to crunch some numbers just to be safe. But for example, like the coagulated blood. Okay, let's go look at coagulated blood. So over here at my trading post, right this second at least, coagulated blood is about 1 coin a piece. So I can pay an additional 10 coins per craft, and then I can get significantly more XP for these materials. So you gotta crunch the numbers because it gets weird. These ones, the coat, for example, does not give, it gives like double the XP but uses 4 times the match. That's not the exact math, but it's like that basically. So you do have to kind of crunch some numbers on this stuff. But if the blood is cheap enough, then you would just go with the gloves or the shoes, depending if you want a coarse leather, satin, or whatever. Ideally, probably gloves. But if the coagulated blood is expensive, then maybe the coat. Now I did some quick math on these just to like make sure how it's gonna go, and at current prices on my server, it was always better to do the gloves versus the coat for these based on the XP and the different things, even though this costs more and all this. Not by much, but it was. But if the cost of the dungeon item is way higher, then it might not work out. And one of the ways, the way you can do the math, in case you are curious, is you can add together the price of all these things and then take the XP and divide it by the price of all these, and that'll give you the amount of XP per coin that you're going to spend. And then you just do the same thing for a different one, like the coat. You just add, go look up satin, and it's like, okay, it's 1.5 times 22, plus however much this is times 12, and you add it all together. What's the cost going to be to make one? And then take the XP and divide by 1. And when I did that for that one, this one, and for the like late game ones down here, they both came out to be better just to go ahead and make gloves. So then with that in mind, you either want to make the, just like before, are you going to use silk, or are you going to use leather, or are you going to use, you know, metal, in this case, star metal, layered leather, or silk? You just got to go to the auction, the trading post. You got to look up each one, find out which one's cheaper, and then fill in all the other cheap ones, you know. So whichever one's cheapest for that tier, that's the one you're going to want to use, and then you're going to go make whichever one. And do keep in mind, the amount of XP that this gives over the base stuff isn't totally insane. So if the cost of the dungeon material is too high, then it will no longer be worth it. You don't want to more than double the price in order to make it, because it gives slightly more than double the XP. So like we got this here that uses satin, same as level 50, it gives 1710. And if we scroll up to the normal satin, it gives 810, so the double is 1620. So if say for example all these materials cost 10 gold and the coagulated blood also costs 10 gold, it's still better to do this, but you're starting to get right on the line where it doesn't really matter that much. But ideally, you'll be in a scenario where all this stuff, say, costs 50 or something, and then the dungeon material costs like 25 or 10 or 40 or something, in which case it'll be better then by a lot, actually. It'll save you a lot of money. All right, and that just leaves me with one last thing to tell you about armoring in general. So now you made it this far, let's just play pretend here that actually two things. So I say this and I gotta say what do you gotta do if you're not gonna use the trading post. All right, real fast, so before we get to that, let's say you hit level 200. All right, now what? Well, there are trophies that you'll need, and you'll need 3 different houses, and you'll have to put in the trophies. So there's major armoring trophy, and you'll need 3 of these, 1 in each of your houses. They're insanely expensive. And then you'll need the armorer's gloves. There's hat, pants, shirt, and shoes, which can vary in price. And then you get a full set of that, and then you also get those trophies. And then also there's a food that's called spicy cabbage soup, and when you eat this for 40 minutes, the gear score of any armoring things you make will be increased by 15. And you combine all of that, and then also I think there's a town buff you can have. I forget how to even check the things anymore. But if you're in a town that has the town buff for +5 armoring or whatever, and like, okay, whatever it was, I don't hardly remember. You have to combine all that crap though. And then, and only then, when you craft 200 armoring stuff, then the potential gear score, instead of being 500 to 540 or whatever it is, and you have to use the best materials. So if you use Asmodium, runic leather, and phoenix weave, you do all that, and you have all the other stuff, and then the potential gear score will be 595 to 600, which means you have like a 1 in 5 chance of getting a 600 legendary. Although I don't know that matters as much now that there's the umbral shard system. I think you only actually need 590, so you don't have to go that insane anymore. You used to have to go that insane because that was the only way to get 600 plus, but you don't have to really go that insane. You just need 590 now, unless they changed it from back in April or whatever. But that's how you get this number to be higher, in case you were wondering. So anyway, let me really quick though touch up on what if you want to just gather things, you don't really want to use the trading post. Like, well, the reality is, if you're going to do that, then the most efficient thing is not going to be the dungeon gear. Like, if you don't want to spend money at all, and you literally just want to get every item all by yourself, then the dungeon gear is not worth it. It's not worth running dungeons just to collect it. It takes forever to collect enough just for one click. It's only worth it when you can go to the trading post and just buy, like, you know, hundreds and hundreds of it. Like, snap your fingers, you know, that's when it becomes more effective. If you're not totally against the trading post, I would at least recommend selling some of your materials, iron, leather, whatever, in order to buy those dungeon materials. That will actually save you money, in theory, at least. As for where to farm every material, I don't even want to get started on that. I know there's a map you can use. I will link it in the description of this video below the first paragraph. It's newworld-map.com. You can search for resources. You can find them on the map, figure out where they are, and then make farming routes for wherever you want to go. Like, because otherwise I have to show you a farming route for literally every single thing in the game, and I feel like that would be like a whole, like, another 10-minute video of like best iron farming spots, best star metal farming spots, best satin farming spots, best hemp, whatever. It's like, oh my god, I'm not gonna do that right now. So but yeah, I'll include a map that you can use though to try to find resources to farm. You'll just farm iron, leathers, and silks and cloths and things, and then you'll refine them and then craft them yourself. That's assuming you don't want to use a trading post. Otherwise, you just do whatever you think will make you the most money. You can go check one of my money farming guides from like a year ago. Hopefully some of them still work, and make some money like make a ton of money per hour doing something else, and then just buy all the materials. That's always the fastest way, guys. I know a lot of people never want to accept it or just get bent out of shape over it, but the best thing you can do is make money with something else and then just buy the ingredients. That always will be faster on your time. It'll always be faster on your time. That's the fastest way to level armoring. That plus everything I taught you in this video to min-max the efficiency and level up the armoring as fast and effectively as possible. Hopefully this video answered all your questions, guys. I tried to think of everything I could in order to explain it all to you. I'm hoping I didn't forget anything. I don't think I forgot anything, at least not anything major. But if I did, just comment, and I'll try to answer in the comments, and maybe there'll be some additional information in the comments in the future at some point. But that's my armoring guide for 2022. This is the updated version, just to double check if everything's the same. I just wanted to check it out again and do it all again, basically. And those are my conclusions. That, as far as I'm aware, those were the fastest, most effective, and efficient ways to level up armoring in 2022 in New World.